see you guys in the dark.
So this happened when I had just turned 11. My parents were very strict with me growing up, most particularly my mom. She was especially weird about letting me sleep over or visit with friends with older males present in their homes. I never understood why, as I was born and raised in Canada, and sleepovers were pretty common with my Western peers. I just figured it was due to the fact that she grew up in a strict Muslim household back home, and men and women would keep separate for the most part. What I found odd, though, was that she even kept the same energy around male relatives that she wasn't very familiar with, like my cousins and even uncles from my father's side. Anyways, so one day, I begged both her and my dad on my hands and knees to please let me sleep over at my best friend's house. I'll call her Emma. Emma's house, I even stressed that she knew her parents and her younger brother, so there would be no reason why staying the night just once would be a problem. She of course still disagreed, but some other convincing from my dad, she had finally folded, so I was so excited about that. So fast forward to the day of the sleepover. My friend Emma, her little brother, who was a year younger than us, Justin, and I were playing video games in the living room. We had just come in from playing outside in the snow, and I noticed a young-looking, attractive older man watching us from the window. So I asked her who that was. She said that was her stepdad's younger brother, who was visiting from LA. I thought that this was super cool, and I immediately started asking her a bunch of questions about him. I got the vibe that this was kind of the black sheep of her stepdad's family, since she vaguely mentioned he got in trouble a lot in the States. Anyway, so later we're all eating dinner, and he joins us. He sits next to me at the dinner table, and he immediately starts showering me with compliments. Keep in mind, I had just turned 11, and he was just in his early 30s. He kept on saying how sweet and cute I was, and he even pinched my cheeks. At this point, Emma's mom and dad started clearing their throats, sending signals to him that he needs to stop. Honestly, I only just realized this as I get older, and I never even thought anything was wrong at the time. So that night, Emma and I hang out in her bedroom, recording dumb videos on Vine, reading creepypastas and stuff like that. Eventually, we end up falling asleep in her bed. I wake up in the middle of the night. It was probably like 2 a.m. or something like that, because I had to pee for some reason. I felt really weird about this, especially since it was my first time sleeping away from home, and I would have to navigate the long dark hallway to the bathroom. As I'm walking, I hear something shifting around in one of the rooms. I brush it off as either Emma's parents or her brother. I truly forgot about her uncle at this point. So after coming out of the bathroom, I see a figure at the end of the hall, which gives me the biggest heart attack. It was her uncle, and he was gesturing me to come to him. Stupidly, I did, because I thought he just wanted to talk. When I approach him, he says, "I thought that it was you, cutie. Why is the little girl awake?" I'm like, what the hell? Even at 11 years old, I was wondering who in their right mind would say something so odd. But before I can respond, he gently tugs on one of my curls and asks if I want to see some pictures in his room. I get really scared, feeling like I was doing something bad, and I tell him I'm not sure if I'm allowed. He just scoffs at this and asks whose permission I need. I laugh nervously because I didn't want to be mean. But in my mind, I'm already seeing the ass whooping I'm going to get if I go to this man's room alone. What's funny is I didn't even consider how odd it was that a grown man would ask a kid to look at pictures in his room in the middle of the night. I didn't even feel fear or sense of danger. I just felt a strange feeling in my gut, like I was doing something wrong. He gets tired of me waffling, and he takes my hand, trying to take me into the guest room he was staying in, and I pull back. That's when Emma's younger brother and my friend Justin walks out of his bedroom. It turns out he was gaming and watching streams, happened to hear something that was going on in the hallway. Justin looks me dead in the eye and says my name. You should get back to your bed, because his parents would get mad if they found out I was up. I was so grateful and walked towards him quickly before diverting to Emma's bedroom, where she was still out cold. Before closing the door, I look over my shoulder to see her uncle just standing there in front of his guest room, watching me in the darkness. I barely had slept that night. The next day, Justin and I never spoke of anything that happened the night before. He just acted very short and somewhat dismissive of his uncle during breakfast, but otherwise acted as if nothing was out of the ordinary. I never told Emma what happened. For some reason, I never told her parents either, or even mine. Unfortunately, I was also just as friendly to her uncle as I was before. He was even blatantly touchy, playing with my hair and squeezing my face. But as usual, I didn't act like anything was wrong. I never told my parents or older sisters out of fear that they would forbid me from ever sleeping out again, or worse. My dad would try to beat the guy up. However, I never slept at her house, or even visited with her until her uncle went back to the States. Several years ago, me and my friends had started a band and got to the point where we were playing every single week, sometimes twice a week, bars, frat parties, marathons, wherever our manager would get us to play. Almost all of us were 19 at the time. Most of our gigs had occurred within a 40-mile radius in Los Angeles. Pretty quickly, we started noticing the same guy showing up at all of our shows. We had a fan. Great, right? Well, this was no regular groupie. This dude looked like a stretched out Ron Jeremy without his charm. Permanently greasy, thin strands of curly hair spaced out on his head. He had a major pedo stash. And he was at youngest, a rough mid-40s. Loose clothing, and the way I remember it was his whole outfit from jacket to socks was cargo shorts. He would show up by himself at every single show, mostly just standing at the back. Sometimes he'd get in the pit and dance. But yeah, every show. Frat parties he wasn't allowed in. Underground shows, whatever. After one show, he offered us all sandwiches that he made. We had thrown them away because, dude, it's 10 p.m. at night, and we don't want homemade stranger sandwiches. Who knows what he did to them? After another, he tried to kiss our lead singer, a dude, just by walking up to him and saying hi. Our lead singer had to tell him off. I think he threatened to report him for stalking and harassment. He disappeared after that. Maybe he was just terribly lonely. And he didn't realize that when we said we wanted to connect with the audience, it was just in a lift up spirits kind of way. Maybe we were more attractive than we realized to old creeps. Maybe our performance just struck the perfect chord with him, and our band was what he felt was lacking in his life. Whatever it was, I hope this Ron Jeremy lookalike doesn't come back and see us ever again. When I was 6 years old, I attended the elementary school, which was located in our very small town. My way to and from school was basically 500 meters of main road before returning to the street where I lived. At the time, we're talking about the late 90s here. All the parents in town were extremely adamant on telling their kids not to trust or follow strangers. Never get into anyone's car, even if they say they know your parents and our friends. The reason why was there was a murder 3 years back in the same town. A girl not even 6 years old was found dead and assaulted in a field. The strange thing about it is, nobody knows how exactly she was taken. No signs of forced entry or anything like that, which implies somebody lured her somewhere without her suspecting a thing. The case still hasn't been solved more than 20 years later. So our parents were very afraid that their kids were going to be next, because kids can be really stupid, and you can't watch them 24/7. Now on to what almost happened to me. I was walking home from elementary school. About halfway home, at the shadiest and most covered by trees and bushes area, a car pulls up right next to me. A blonde, about 30-ish-year-old woman was driving. She told me she would drive me home. She claimed to be going in the same direction anyway. Kid-like as I was not suspicious. It was like, oh, no, it's not that far. I can walk myself. Then she started being very insistent. The whole, oh, come on, it's fine. Nothing to worry about. And you can relax instead of walking kind of thing. Alarm bells were ringing in my head when she said that she knew my mother. They are friends, and supposedly she was asked by her to drive me home. Thank God for my parents repeatedly talking to me about the tricks that people use to lure you in. I started being creeped out, continued to walk, but she kept driving right beside me. Now the real world part is, in hindsight, was her next attempt to get me into the car. She started saying that I was obviously afraid, and cool children are not afraid of such things. If you want to be cool, you should just relax. Honestly, I did not realize the full extent of this situation. I just felt uncomfortable, and I wanted to get out of this conversation. So I just started sprinting the rest of the way back to my house. Once I got home, I stayed right next to the door, and I kept looking out the window for a few minutes. And guess who drove by? Basically checked out the house. That creepy woman. The road was a dead end, and only after 3 more minutes the card came back the same way. It took years until I realized what kind of bullet I had dodged there. All I was thinking was, my parents told me not to do this. I didn't know why, or what that woman had wanted. The drill of hearing over and over not to believe strangers, or get into their car, kicked in. When I was older and started getting into true crime, I remember this whole thing for the first time in 2 decades. Then I realized, holy shit, that woman was most likely sent. as a trustworthy front woman to lure kids into their car and take off. Would be what she was doing this for some crazy pedo or human trafficker. Who knows? Moral of the story is, even if your kids are too stupid or young, like I was, to comprehend such things, the rules of not following strangers, and the fact that strangers will lie to you for evil intentions, must be drilled into their child's head like watching both ways when crossing the road.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.